господа. The majority here understand Russian. Please raise your hands who speaks and understand Russian. Вы поднимите руки, кто знает и понимает русский. The majority, yeah, okay. Now raise your hands who don't understand Russian. Only here. Only here. Я буду говорить по-русски. Профессор Эрик Гозлан, со-модератор, будет говорить по-английски. Значит, мы открываем нашу секцию, которая будет называться «Современные формы проявления антисемитизма, расизма и ксенофобии». I'm only telling you the name of the panel. Значит, у нас имеется 6 докладов. Я рад представить вам, еще раз говорю, исполнительного директора Союза народов за мир господина Эрика Гозлана из Франции. Меня зовут Михаил Анатольевич. Фамилии членов. Я вице-президент Всемирного еврейского конгресса из России, живу в Москве. Значит, мы просим укладываться в 10 минут саму презентацию. У нас 6 презентаций. И плюс-минус 1-2 минуты на представление самого себя и какие-то теплые слова, или, наоборот, не теплые, которые вы хотите адресовать аудитории. Итак, первым господин Брэндон МакГевер. Where is Professor McGever? Well, he was here. Okay, so well, are you Professor McGever, yeah?
No.
No. Это вы, профессор МакГевер. Я уже хотел вас вообще убрать из расписания. Значит, профессор, Брэндон МакГевер из Шотландии, заместитель директора Института Пирса по изучению антисемитизма, который выступит с докладом «Связь расизма и антисемитизма. Возможные проблемы 21 века». Так, пока вы уходили, профессор, я сказал 10 минут на презентацию и 1 минута на презентацию самого себя. Кадима.
Здравствуйте, друзья и коллеги. Извините за опоздание. Я хотел бы поблагодарить организаторов из Российского еврейского конгресса за приглашение принять участие в этом замечательном событии. К сожалению, мой доклад будет на английском, потому что, как видите, уровень моего русского языка не очень. Так, we gather today at an unprecedented moment in recent history. The unleashing of hate that we are witnessing just now truly is global in its dimensions. From Bolsonaro's Brazil to Orban's Hungary, from Modi's India to Trump's America, racism is emboldened, authoritarianism thrust into the ascendancy, and yes, in some cases, fascism mainstreamed. And before anybody accuses me of being complacent, let me please add to that list the unfolding disaster of Brexit Britain. It is no longer alarmist, it seems, to declare that in many parts of the world we find ourselves clutching for something that the theorist Walter Benjamin referred to in the middle of the 20th century as the emergency brake. This conference sets out to explore the relationship between racism, anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And the urgency of the task could not be any clearer. The need to think creatively and critically about these issues, in my lifetime at least, has never been so great. But at the same time, the obstacles are significant. Half a century ago, opposition to anti-Semitism and opposition to racism were closely aligned, both politically and intellectually. But today these connections appear slender. For many, there have been a parting of ways, such that today scholars of racism and scholars of anti-Semitism are all too rarely in conversation with one another. In the country where I'm based at the moment, England, there's been an ongoing crisis within the Labour Party around the question of anti-Semitism. Among other things, this persistent and ongoing row reflects what I just described, the growing parting of ways and division among those who claim to oppose racism in all its forms. And this was brought into view just this summer, a few weeks ago this year, when nearly 100 black, Asian and minority ethnic organisations signed an open letter expressing dismay at Labour's proposed move to adopt the IHRA, IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. The definition, they said, would suppress any reckoning with colonial racisms, past and present. These divisions appear in the scholarship on these subjects as well. Most textbooks on racism, at least in the UK, have very little, if anything, to say about the question of anti-Semitism. And at the same time, anti-Semitism studies are often isolated as a separate discipline altogether. And yet, the dialogue between racism and anti-Semitism has never been more needed. I want to ask a question. Why has it been so difficult to bring these issues together? What are the theoretical and indeed political obstacles that stand in the way of a more integrated anti-racist scholarship? In this talk, I want to identify, just very briefly, three areas, three sources of division that animate the conversation about racism and anti-Semitism in Britain. And I'm going to speak about Britain mostly because this is where I'm based and I'm close to the ground there. Okay, the first of these three concerns the way race tends to be conceptualised in scholarly debate and indeed political debate, and the ambiguous place that Jews occupy within those conversations. In the UK, the emergence of the sociology of racism in the second half of the 20th century came in the form of colour-coded accounts of racism that were shaped profoundly by the British context of decolonisation. These accounts of racism had very little to say about anti-Semitism. Why? In part because Jews were seen as white, identified with the West. And of course this is rather curious, because for much of the 19th and 20th century, Jews were racialised as outsiders within the European context. That is to say, European racism defined Jews as an alien presence within. But, and white, then we can see how prevailing understandings of racism will struggle to come to terms with the present. In short, if we limit ourselves to an understanding of racism which focuses solely on white privilege, we will continue to fail to recognise Jews. The second source of division figures around the issue of class and power. Racism studies in the UK has traditionally identified racism of individual prejudice, the literature tells us, but fundamentally is rooted in power structures and class inequality. I'm sympathetic to this view. However, such an understanding of racism will struggle to identify Jews as its victims, especially in a British context. It means that the community is overwhelmingly middle class and indeed marked as white. And thirdly and finally is the question of colonialism. In British sociology, European racism is often understood as a consequence of colonial expansion. But what such a perspective risks doing is eliding those histories of racialised exclusion within Europe itself. If the history of racism within the West is flattened out, we will continue to fail to come to terms with anti-Semitism. Jews, too often identified with dominant white colonial culture, are left out of the narrative. And as we know, the imperatives of post-colonial racism and the politics of anti-Semitism collide most painfully around the question of Israel and Palestine. We see this with the tendency to fold Zionism into European imperialism and settler colonialism. While such a move may bring into sharp view the racism endured by Palestinians, it overlooks the crucial fact that Zionism was a response to murderous, genocidal racism within Europe. And this is one of the reasons why scholars of racism in Britain find it difficult to navigate the question of Israel-Palestine. Jewish statehood has left a complicated history for 21st century scholars of racism. We need a language for that conversation, and we don't have it at present. So in conclusion, taken together, we can see that if racism is understood solely with reference to whiteness, to power, and to colonialism, we leave ourselves unable to locate Jewish history within anti-racist scholarship. We have an opportunity to resist confining victims of racism to separate communities of suffering, as Edward Said once eloquently put it. Once the history of anti-Semitism is seen to be part of the history of racism more generally, I think we can begin to reach a deeper, much richer and more meaningful understanding of these connected histories, and we'll be better placed to confront the emergency that we find ourselves in just now. Thank you.
Thank you. Спасибо. Eric, Professor Gordon, אולי קדימה, שתכיר עם הנואם הבא. Tell the next speaker for the audience.
Okay, thanks for the first panelist. And I think that what is important in the question of this forum is that that is a new war that we have in Europe and in the States. And we have to think how to fight against this war. And this war, its name is antisemitism, xenophobia, and racism. And when you have a new war, you have a new strategy. And perhaps the next panel will speak about that. And the second is?
Yeah, the second is Professor Alvin Rosenfeld from University of Indiana, Anti-Zionism and Anti-Semitism. Also a very important topic. Please.
Thank you. Special thanks to Professor Altman and Christina Winkler for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be, and a privilege to be with you as well. My topic is going to shift from the one you just heard. I'm going to speak with you about a subject that I can't really cover adequately in 10 minutes, but maybe in the discussion we can fill in the nuances. The links between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism date back decades, but they've taken on a new urgency in our own day. Frans Timmermans, a former Dutch foreign minister, currently first vice president of the European Commission, recognized as much when speaking at an EU meeting in Brussels in 2015. He noted a sharp increase in openly displayed hatred in today's Europe. I quote him, "Europe," he said, "is going through a period of crisis and turmoil which is challenging the very fabric of European society." He saw the rise in anti-Semitism as symptomatic of this turmoil, and he acknowledged the threat it poses. These are his words. "When you know about European history, you know that the darker, uglier forces in our societies always turn first against minorities, always turn first against Jews. Anti-Semitism," he continues, "is not just terrible for the Jewish community, it is like a fever in an infected body. Left unchallenged, it will create a much, much bigger problem. So tackling anti-Semitism is an essential operation to save what we cherish in our society. He concluded his reflections by observing that far from having been eradicated, again his words, I quote him, anti-Semitism is still a reality, and that is in fact on the rise. Old anti-Semitism that we have known for centuries, and a new anti-Semitism that sometimes tries to hide itself behind anti-Zionism. If matters were bad in Europe when Timmermans spoke, and they have since become much worse, and on various fronts. In both its older and newer forms, a resurgent anti-Semitism has come powerfully to the fore and is now widespread. That is especially so with regard to hostility towards Israel, which in its most extreme forms, under the camouflage term anti-Zionism, impels its adherents to denounce the Jewish state as a criminal entity and to vilify and attack those identified with it. References to Israel as a successor state to apartheid South Africa or to Nazi Germany are typical of the rhetoric of this obsession at its most overwrought. But lesser gradations of vilification are also in wide circulation today and not extreme. 7 decades after Israel's establishment, public calls for the country. Those who align themselves with radical anti-Zionist agendas frequently advance the goals of delegitimization. And the ultimate endpoint of delegitimization is the dissolution of Israel as a sovereign Jewish state, and for some, the nullification of the notion of the Jewish people as a people as such. Those who hold these aggressive views may, as Timmermans note, hide behind the facade of anti-Zionism, but the issue, in fact, has little to do with Zionism as such. Anti-Zionism is often a camouflage term, as Stephen Harper, the former Canadian Prime Minister, recognized when he called anti-Zionism, and I quote him, the face of the new anti-Semitism. It targets the Jewish people by targeting Israel and attempts to make the old bigotry acceptable for a new generation. Others have spoken similarly, including the present Pope, and I quote him, to attack Jews, he has said, is anti-Semitism, but an outright attack on the state of Israel is also anti-Semitism. Despite such denunciations by prominent world figures, anti-Zionism not only persists, but also now has global reach, and to quote the late eminent scholar Robert Wistrich, it has become the most dangerous and effective form of anti-Semitism in our time. Underwritten by an ideology that aims at the elimination of Israel, and sometimes accompanied by a radical vision of a world liberated from the Jews, it is a totalist form of anti-Semitism. What is needed in such an environment is for people in positions of leadership in every country's cultural, educational, political, and religious life to speak out against these developments forcefully and unambiguously. But more than words are needed if we really do aim to protect the future, as the title of our conference asks us to do. It is imperative that we recognize anti-Semitism as a newly re-energized social pathology and develop much more systematic methods of monitoring it in all of its manifestations. As is, such efforts take place inconsistently and in too many places without reliable results. Scholars need to study anti-Jewish hostility as seriously and as comprehensively as they do racism, xenophobia, and other chronic societal ills. In addition, careful scrutiny needs to be given to the use of the internet to spread anti-Semitism and other kinds of hate speech. In whatever ways possible that are consistent with the need to protect free speech, hateful, threatening words against Jews and others, including on social media, need to be discouraged and curtailed. In addition to all of the above, effective legislation should be instituted to put checks on these problems before they get still worse. This fact was recognized on March the 7th, 2017, when all 100 members of the United States Senate put forward a strong appeal to the leading law enforcement officials in the present government's administration. They drew explicit attention to the upsurge of anti-Semitism, and in the wake of what just happened in Pittsburgh, you can be certain that there will be a still greater determination to press the issue home. They called for swift action against the rapid and intensifying spread of threats against Jewish community organizations across the country. This is completely unacceptable and un-American, the senators wrote. They are right. And if their words are heeded, and if we can institute practical and effective initiatives to check this hatred wherever it appears, we will all be better off. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rosenfeld. That we understood that there is a correlation between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And the fact is, when you see BDS, the organization, they start for boycott only the product from the settlement in Israel. After they did the boycott of Israel products, and now we see that the boycott is for the Jewish products. So there is a very big correlation between the two. And now we will hear about the anti-Semitism in the backland, with Jelena Jurovic.
Go there, and I say also. I'm also very glad я очень рад также представить вам мою старую и добрую подругу Елену Джурович. Сегодня она советник еврейской общины Белграда в Сербии. И еще недавно она была одним из практически создателей, руководителей еврейской общины Черногории, которая, как полагаю, до сих пор находится под ее влиянием. Полслова буквально про тему балканского антисемитизма, который нам представит сейчас Елена Джурович. Мы вот сейчас прослушали такую острую тему, как антисионизм и антисемитизм. Обычно, когда мы говорим об антисемитизме, мы делим как бы на три совершенно разных типа антисемитизма в сегодняшнем мире. Это, допустим, Западная Европа плюс Америки и Австралия. На бывший соцлагерь, для тех, кто родился в СССР, это понятно, что это Восточная Европа, которая вошла сейчас в состав ЕС. И, наконец, на условно взаимодействие СНГ, как бы Россия, Беларусь, Казахстан, Средняя Азия с Кавказом, с небольшими. И мы видим, что это совершенно различные, разные абсолютно зоны антисемитизма. Разные носители, разные лозунги, разные идеи. И вот Балканы, для многих из нас, для тех, кто пытался разобраться в этой картине, они казались белым пятном. Непонятно было, куда они относятся. К Западу ли, как бывшие советские люди смотрели на Югославию, как на свободную западную страну, к бывшему соцлагерю, куда она как бы естественно вписывалась, или еще что-то. Поэтому очень важно услышать сейчас вот Елену Джурович эту презентацию. Я прошу следующих выступавших быть готовыми выступать с этого подиума. Меня просили тут это сделать.
Thank you, Mika. Thank you, all the organizers who invited me here. I have like 7-pager here, and I'm just going to go very fast because I understand we don't have much time. So I'm going to give you a crash course what's going on in the Balkans. I don't want to offend anybody, at least not by chance. When I'm referring to the Balkans, I'm mostly referring to former Yugoslavia. Now I'm going to speak about two types of anti-Semitism happening in Serbia, where I currently live. Mika told you that I'm in the advisory in the Jewish community of Belgrade, and I was the vice president of the Jewish community of Montenegro. And I'm going to speak a little bit about anti-Semitism in Croatia, which is like more popular now because some articles have been written by Mr. Menachem Rosensaft. It was the tablet took this, and I have some quotes from him. And anti-Semitism in Croatia looks a little bit like the former Soviet, I mean, in the ones that we have in the Baltics. But anti-Semitism in Serbia is quite different. So when they say there is no anti-Semitism in Serbia, that is not true. What we have is, let's say, Goodwin's law on Red Bull, as I call it. And now I will explain, if you don't know, American attorney and author Mike Goodwin coined his eponymous law in 1990, Goodwin's law, or Goodwin's rule, of Hitler acknowledges it is an internet adage asserting that as online discussion grows longer, the probability of comparison involving Hitler approaches. So we have in Serbian media, and especially in Serbian comment sections, Goodwin's law on Red Bull. This rule is applied immediately. So 2 weeks ago, the cover of one pro-establishment Serbian daily, very popular, displayed the photograph in which president of the neighboring country was photoshopped to look like Adolf Hitler, accompanied by the headline which said "worse than Hitler." The reason was that in that country, I don't want to mention which one, the police prevented a small number of football hooligans to attend the football match, and some of them were ethnic Serbs. So because of that, the president was depicted as Hitler, and the headline was "He's worse than Hitler." Discussed with this, as a journalist and foremost as a human being, I posted a harsh critique on my social accounts. A number of comments under my posts were along the lines: "We will soon topple the government of Serbia, who allows this to be published in newspapers, and they will go through what Eichmann went through in Jerusalem." So my rage in this particular case was not directed at the government of Serbia, but rather at the fact that Hitler is being so blatantly normalized and significance of his deed blatantly diminished. However, responses mentioned above clearly show that people of Serbia don't understand this. By normalizing Hitler, Serbian media is normalizing Holocaust as well. The comments I mentioned above actually did the same. For example, president of the country is compared to Hitler, president of the other country is compared to Eichmann. Even the authors probably wanted to express some support of my view, but we ended up where we ended up in this comment section. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. So I need to speak. Yeah. Okay. No. Mm-hmm. To try to answer this question, how did we get here? I will show you. I can't show you because I came poorly prepared. I will show you internet meme that has been shared a lot recently. It is a map of typical European capital. You can't see it from here, but it has like every major European city, old town, hostel, dystopian block housing, hipster home brickwork, some kind of tower. But in the center of every city is what they say, World War II Memorial Avenue. The only two European cities that don't have World War II Memorial Avenues are Belgrade and Zagreb in Croatia and Serbia. How did we end it here? Historical revisionism and anti-fascism are dominating political discourses in two larger ex-Yugoslav republics, Croatia and Serbia. And this is a major reason for increased level of anti-Semitism, xenophobia in both countries. Although Serbian and Croatian anti-Semitism is not violent, it is omnipresent in both populations, and especially in the comment sections of the online media, not just alt-right, but also in the mainstream official, so-called, what we call normal media. In Croatia, we have what I call old-school anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism as defined by David Nirenberg, but we also have anti-Zionism in Croatia. In Serbia, because of the Kosovo issues, I know that some of you know about this, the situation is slightly different. Serbs, both journalists and their leaders, usually strongly support Israel in actions of Jewish state and the military of Jewish state in Israel. However, so they support Israel. Israel is great when they do something, for example, in Gaza, something. It's always presented in a very positive manner in our media. However, any mention of the Jews as a nation or culture usually provokes ridicule, such as shadow government, evil bankers, New World Order, and everything else. So this is quite unique case that I don't think exists anywhere in Europe. And complete opposite what we have in other countries. In most of Europe, anti-Zionism is a pathway toward anti-Semitism. People claim that they don't like Jewish nation, but condemn Israel politics or military activities. In Serbia, it is complete opposite. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I have my opinions on that, but we don't have time. So, also from the media, and this is the official media, I will skip some parts here. What I wanted to emphasize also is revisionism and Holocaust remembrance. Holocaust became an everyday leverage point where the comment section and official articles and in every paper cries, yeah, Jews got it bad, but we the Serbs suffered the most. Many comments are simply stating that situation, for example, in Kosovo, it's a lot worse than a Holocaust, that is in the official media. Those types of comments or those types of articles get many likes. Croatian memories practices are very similar. Of course, comment sections are full of comparison. Yeah, Jews got it bad, but look what happened to Croats in Bleiburg. I see 5 minutes. There is a Bleiburg is basically a fascist rally of the Croatian fascist Ustasha, and it really has nothing to do with Holocaust. I spoke before about Menahem Rozesev's great article on the situation in Croatia, and in my paper I have links to that. I don't want to spend my 5 minutes now on quoting Menahem, but it is very important if you are, and I guess some of you might be interested in the topic of anti-Semitism in the Balkans. I can refer you to this article, and it's going to be also in my article when it is published by this conference. I want to end with the Prague problem, what I call the Prague problem. Jelena Subotic, she is now in Georgetown University. She writes about Holocaust remembrance in the post-communist Europe, and I quote Jelena Subotic. Post-communist states have also removed anti-fascist resistance from the core memory of the Holocaust, which has allowed for revival and ideological normalization of fascist ideological movement in the present. An important piece of Croatia's new identity construction post-91 was a complete rejection of the communist past and conflation of this past with the Serbian hegemony. First changes in the way in which Croatia remembers the communist past occurred in early 90s when streets, schools and public buildings that carried the names of famous partisans or communist leaders, as was the practice across communist Eastern Europe, were overnight changed into names of famous pre-communist Croatian public figures. This move was important because the legitimacy of post-communist Croatia was based on a complete rejection of communism and a renewed connection to the pre-communist, mythically, nationally pure character of its statehood. This is why the new post-communist elite insisted on rehabilitating many anti-communist public figures, including many pro-fascist allies. This crisis, however, is not only Croatians' own making. In fact, much of Croatia's memorialization practices followed the narrative framework often in the 2008 Prague Declaration. The declaration statement on two totalitarianisms is frequently referred to whenever a discussion arises about proper remembrance of Croatia's fascist legacies. Holocaust remembrance, then, is no longer about the Holocaust at all, but is also very acute ontological security needs of new states which are building their identity as fundamentally anti-communist, which then in turn makes them more legitimately European. The same goes...
Janina,
Yeah?
can you speak a little bit slowly, because I think the translator will dead in a few minutes.
Will be dead.
Yes, she will be dead in a few minutes.
Okay, it's okay. You won't be dead?
And for us too, so a little bit, your
Okay.
time.
Okay. No, I'm...
Take your time.
No. Sorry? I have second copy. The same what Jelena writes about in her new book goes for Serbia. It happened only a decade later. A number of initiatives to glorify and rehabilitate Nazi collaborators have been undertaken in Serbia. Many of those have been successful, resulting in the court's ruling that declared Nazi collaborators innocent before the law. The good news that the proceedings to rehabilitate Milan Nedic failed. This is what Mika knows very well about, because we were lobbying like crazy for that. He was a collaborator prime minister of Nazi-occupied Serbia, under whose rule Serbia was declared Judenfrei. This happened thanks to hard lobbying and objections of many international Jewish organizations, some of whom are here with us today, and Jewish communities in the region. In conclusion, to the attempt to paint everyone with the same brush, Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, Tito, Marx, communist heroes, and Mengele, under the pretext of their common totalitarian provenance or support for such political systems, go far beyond any civilized standpoint and common sense. It turns out that only Jew that we should respect was the one that died without any ideology, so nothing for my predecessors, with no connections to communism or anti-fascist fight. Anti-Semitism lies within the presumption that the Jewish communists and members of anti-fascist movements were not victims but collaborators of another evil ideology. The Prague Declaration is therefore very dangerous as a tool of color governments. It puts in the wind of the sails of historical revisionists of the World War II, and the result is normalization of the Holocaust and strengthening of anti-Semitism. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Elena. One short question. Tell me, do I rightly understand that there is no BDS movement in the former Yugoslavia?
Yeah, there is no.
Okay.
You understood it right.
Thank you. Так, теперь переходим на русский язык, я понимаю. Следующий выступающий Владимир Ильич Мукамель, главный научный сотрудник, руководитель сектора Института социологии ФНИСЦ Российской академии наук. Ксенофобия мигрантов против ксенофобии россиян. Вы по-русски будете говорить, да?
Да. Вот. Как им пользоваться? Ага, понял. Спасибо. Мы прекрасно понимаем, что ксенофобия, антисемитизм, мигрантофобия идут в одной связке. Между ними существует очень тесная корреляция. Мы имеем определенное представление о распространенности ксенофобских настроений среди российского населения. Но каковы настроения мигрантов, мы, к сожалению, знаем очень мало. В своем выступлении я буду опираться на результаты двух исследований. Это так называемый РЛМС 2015 года. Было опрошено свыше 15 тысяч россиян. И по аналогичной программе были опрошены в 2017 году свыше 8,5 тысяч иностранных граждан. Это иностранцы из государств СНГ и Грузии. И российские граждане, и иностранцы. Была сделана попытка определить их установки толерантности и интолерантности. Использовались 3 критерия. Доверие к людям других национальностей, оценка, что другие национальности склонны к агрессии и криминалу, и согласие и несогласие с тем, что есть национальности, которые вы не уважаете. Что у нас получилось? Вот судя по тому, что мы использовали одни и те же критерии, похоже, что мигранты, иностранцы относятся, среди них носителей интолерантных установок существенно меньше, нежели среди российских граждан. Грубо говоря, складывается впечатление, что ксенофобские настроения среди россиян существенно выше, чем среди иностранных граждан. Если вы слышали выступление Льва Гудкова, то кто такие носители интолерантных установок среди россиян? Это, как правило, более молодые люди, среди них больше молодых мужчин, менее образованные, менее встроенные в социум. Я пропущу, здесь показано, что они занимают худшие, не самые лучшие рабочие места. Как правило, они недовольны своей работой, очень низко оценивают уровень своего благосостояния, свои властные полномочия, уважение. Я хочу просто пропустить, учитывая, если вы мне дадите больше времени. Это мне напоминает одну конференцию в Тель-Авиве. Да, там началась торговля. То есть это люди, испытывающие тревоги, страхи, определенные фрустрации. Несмотря на то, что они зарабатывают столько же, но вот оценивают они себя хуже. Что примечательно? Вот уровень доверия, межличностного, межгруппового доверия среди интолерантных россиян очень низок. Но самое забавное, что они существенно меньше доверяют представителям своей национальности, интолерантные россияне. На порядок больше. Каждый третий из них не доверяет. Тогда как среди толерантных, каждый 30-й. Во многом это отражается на общей удовлетворенности своей жизнью. Среди интолерантных россиян доля таких, это почти каждый третий, не удовлетворен своей жизнью. Те, кто выражают толерантные установки, их на порядок, в несколько раз меньше, вдвое здесь, даже больше. И очень примечательно различие носителей толерантных и нетолерантных установок, их отношение к мигрантам. Среди тех, кто говорит, что нам не нужны вообще никакие мигранты, среди толерантных эту позицию поддерживает каждый третий. Но среди интолерантных каждый 2/3. Что же с мигрантами? Вроде бы ситуация существенно лучше, но среди них выделяются очень четко две группы. Это представляющие невидимое меньшинство, мигранты из Украины, Белоруссии, Молдовы. И представители видимых меньшинств, в первую очередь это государства Средней Азии. Киргизия, Таджикистан, Узбекистан. Парадокс в том, что представители невидимых меньшинств, то есть, в первую очередь славяне, они менее толерантны, нежели выходцы из среднеазиатских государств. Здесь есть свои основания. Дело в том, что среди представителей невидимых меньшинств много граждан Украины. Причем среди них много русских. Каждый третий из них русский. Вот если смотреть на них, они интегрированы, русские для 3/4 родной, они работают на хороших рабочих местах, хорошо зарабатывают. Но что-то все-таки не так. Отчасти это потому, что среди них много прибывших из Украины с 2014 года. Те, которые бежали от военных действий на востоке Украины. Наверное, это надо было показать раньше. Дело в том, что если смотреть на отличия толерантных и нетолерантных россиян, то вы увидите, что толерантные респонденты, они лучше вписаны в социум. Они чаще себя ассоциируют не только со всеми гражданами России, с гражданами, то есть с жителями населенного пункта, но и с представителями своего возраста, социальной группы и так далее и тому подобное. И отметим, что интолерантные, они менее социально вписаны, менее интегрированы в социум. А теперь посмотрим структуры идентичности. Слева вот как раз представители невидимых меньшинств, справа представители видимых меньшинств. Интолерантные респонденты, как и видимые меньшинства, так и невидимые, они всегда хуже вписаны в социум. Но обратите внимание, что вот если посмотрите слева, то интолерантные, их структура идентичности практически та же, что и у толерантных, но существенно более скукожена. То же самое среди выходцев из среднеазиатских государств. Еще мы здесь можем заметить, что выходцы из среднеазиатских государств, даже самые толерантные из них, хуже вписаны в российский социум, чем выходцы из Украины, Белоруссии, из Украины, Белоруссии и Молдовы. Что объединяет все-таки интолерантных респондентов, как российских граждан, так и иностранцев, это худшая вписанность в российскую действительность, иная структура идентичности, но, обратите внимание, это колоссальный уровень недоверия. Здесь приведены цифры недоверия к представителям тех или иных социальных групп. Выходцы из Украины, Беларуси, Молдовы, более трети из них не доверяют своим друзьям. Это вообще феноменальный результат. Ни в одном исследовании такие данные не фиксировались. Уж на что Россия...
Vladimir, I think we have to conclude with the time.
Oh, yeah. 1 minute.
Yes,
Oh.
no problem.
Даже российские интолерантные респонденты, у них уровень доверия выше, нежели у мигрантов. Вот, по-видимому, специфическая структура идентичности, низкий уровень доверия, они и являются формированием установок толерантности и интолерантности. Спасибо.
Следующий выступающий Хай Зингер. Хай, не Шая, да. Здесь написано Шая, но это ошибка. Хая, конечно, да. Да, специалист по парламентским и дипломатическим связям Южноафриканского совета по делам евреев, а также член еврейского дипломатического корпуса Всемирного еврейского конгресса. Представит нам доклад на тему «Практические шаги по преодолению антисемитизма. Взгляд из Южноафриканской республики».
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Добрый день. It's now 18 years since my shlichut here in beautiful Moscow. I was working at the Kuravsky School, so I lived on Novoslobodskaya by the Ramstor. Unfortunately, by now, я говорю только чуть-чуть по-русски, so this is going to be in English. My name is Chaya Singer, and I am the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Liaison for the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. I'm heading up the African Regional Working Group for the World Jewish Congress Junior Diplomatic Corps. And I'm also a former chairperson of the World Union of Jewish Students and the South African Union of Jewish Students. So I work closely with the World Jewish Congress and the Junior Diplomatic Corps in Geneva for the World Conference Against Racism in 2009. I would like to look at practical approaches to combating anti-Semitism, using as a case study the work of the South African Jewish Board of Deputies over the last few months. Broadly, the topics I'll be looking at is firstly political engagement, giving a face to the Jewish community and providing input into developing new legislation. Secondly is making use of statutory and quasi-judicial bodies in order to enforce consequences and to contribute to legal precedents. And thirdly, creating alliances and effectively leveraging the notion of civil society at a grassroots level. So the Jewish community in South Africa was established 175 years ago. The majority of our members immigrated from Lithuania and the surrounding territories in the then Russian Empire. So my earrings are from my great-grandmother who came from Riga. The rest of her family was all shot in the public square, but she did manage to come to South Africa, and that's generally the story of most now fourth-generation South Africans in our community. In South Africa, we are a minority of about 60,000 Jews, down from 120,000 in 1980 up until 1994, so we've literally halved. We are a minority population amongst a minority white population of about 5 million people in a country of 58 million South Africans. So we are about 0.1% of the population. Nevertheless, we are very active, we are very organized, and we have made an impact both in South African affairs and world affairs, way out of proportion to our small numbers. When I first arrived at Parliament, I would give my business card, and they say, like you're a Jew. And I say, yes, I'm Jewish. And they say, sure, you guys, you own all the land around here, hey, and you don't like to share. Like, how many Jews do you think there are? I get 1,500,000. And I think that's often a case for minority communities around the world when it comes to the Jewish community. But as such a small minority, we have found, and especially in a country that doesn't have a cultural history of anti-Semitism, we have found that discussions around anti-Semitism, because they are so niche, have been most effective when they're contextualized as just being another manifestation of hate within the broader narrative of combating racism and xenophobia in general. This approach especially has particular traction in a still very deeply racially divided post-apartheid South Africa. So firstly, in terms of political engagement and lobbying, a strategic approach specifically to parliamentary engagement is a new initiative for the Board of Deputies, which we've developed in the last 3 years due to changes in our political landscape. As the first person in this position, the main objective of my engagement has been to create a formalized structure of government and cooperation, create a formalized structure of cooperation between our community and our government. This entails establishing relationships throughout the Parliament, across the political spectrum, presenting our community as multi-focused and committed to South Africa, and identifying opportunities for strategic and legislative engagement where we can contribute in the national interest. To this end, we identified a number of diverse portfolio committees falling within our areas of interest as a community, and those important to the survival of our constitutional order as a country. So these include the portfolio committees on justice, police, international relations, trade and industry, communications and education. In the last few months, we've submitted written and oral submissions in these prioritized portfolio committees, including written submissions to the cyber hate, to the Formal and Publications Amendment Bill, a white paper on refugees based on our anti-xenophobia work with migrant communities, a presentation to international relations in response to a presentation from South African Jews for Free Palestine, which maligned the local South African Jewish community, a submission on the Hate Crimes Bill, which seeks to criminalize hate speech, as well as our National Action Plan, constitutional review, among others. Our submissions are very well received. Many times, the committee members would sit open-mouthed as we describe the hate that we receive and our difficulties as stakeholders in trying to access the very progressive constitutional and hate speech laws in South Africa. For example, we would tell a story how we received a direct threat on Facebook, threatening members of our community, and we walk into the police station where we have to lay a complaint, and they say, "What's Facebook?" So we've had to go through, with legal assistance to try and get the right documentation over to the Facebook offices in Ireland, because unlike in other countries, South Africa, there are very strict laws. So even though the headquarters of Facebook, they don't have an office in the region, they still do have to comply with our regional laws. So those kind of mechanisms have been very difficult as stakeholders to be able to access. In terms of the legislative approach in accessing our statutory bodies, our Chapter 9 institutions have been mandated by our Constitution to safeguard democracy. So these include our Human Rights Commission, our Broadcast Complaints Commission, our Equality Courts. We've had 3 findings in the last 3 months that I just would like to share with you because they were successful findings in our favour. The first is a judgment that was handed down in the Equality Court, which we welcomed, confirming that trade unionist COSATU international relations spokesperson Bongani Masuku was guilty of hate speech against the Jewish community. The case was brought by the South African Human Rights Commission after Masuku refused to comply with his ruling on a complaint that was lodged by the Jewish Board of Deputies in 2009. In the judgment, Masuku's statements were deemed to be hurtful, hateful, incite harm and propagate hatred, which amounted to hate speech as envisioned by our Equality Act. And the respondents, comprising of Masuku and COSATU, were ordered, which is the Congress of South African Trade Unions, were ordered to tender an unconditional apology to the Jewish community within 30 days of the order. The case has its origins in a complaint which was launched by the South African Jewish Board of Deputies to the South African Human Rights Commission. When he refused to comply with their finding, they took it to the Equality Court. These remarks were made actually at a university to the South African Union of Jewish Students, where Masuku said that he threatened and said that members of COSATU would target and cause harm to South African families who had members serving in the Israeli Defense Force, and that Jews who continued to stand up for Israel should not just be encouraged but forced to leave South Africa. So the Board of Deputies particularly welcomed the fact that in terms of this judgment, threats and insults against Jews who support Israel cannot be justified on the alleged basis that such attacks are aimed not at Jews but at Zionists. And what was particularly interesting as well is that the judge wrote a scathing review in response to a witness for the defense, who is a pro-BDS Jewish South African professor, Stephen Friedman, and he said that just because he's Jewish and he's written some papers on Israel does not make him a Middle East or human rights expert. So that was also well received, and in the spirit of conciliation, we hope that the board, Masuku and Kasatu will accept this finding and move on. The second one that happened, the second finding, was Tony Ehrenreich, who has now been sanctioned for threatening the Jewish community in August 2014. He was then the Western Cape chairman of the Congress of South African Trade Unions. He posted a comment on Facebook calling for revenge attacks against the South African Jewish Board of Deputies and other Zionist supporters in retaliation for the deaths of Palestinian civilians. Among other inflammatory comments, he wrote, "The time has come to say very clearly that if a woman or child is killed in Gaza, then the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, who are complicit, will feel the wrath of the people of South Africa with the age-old biblical teaching of an eye for an eye." So last month, the South African Human Rights Commission unequivocally upheld a complaint against Ehrenreich lodged by the Board of Deputies. He was found guilty of prohibited hate speech, of harassment, and violating the complainant's right to both dignity and equality, and directed to apologize to the Board of Deputies. Yes. 1 minute. Okay, well, in conclusion, what I would like to say is, broadly, in terms of our strategy, we've looked at, firstly, giving a face to the Jewish community, trying to present ourselves as stakeholders in affecting legislation to specify anti-Semitic rhetoric as opposed to just general racist and hate speech within that legislation. Secondly, it was in terms of leveraging the bodies that do exist to try and enforce these kind of laws and make sure that people know that no matter how long it takes, despite the political interference that comes, the Jewish Board of Deputies will be there to see these cases through up until the end, and there will be consequences for anti-Semitic remarks or threats against the Jewish community. And finally, what I don't have time to talk about is our engagement with civil society. One of the interesting models that we've created is to set up a hate crimes working group. This is an organization of civil society, an umbrella of civil society organizations, human rights organization that then come out to speak against anti-Semitism, and it also gives us a platform then to be able to have a platform to also condemn other forms of racism and xenophobia, etc., through this channel. Other organizations we work with is, for example, the Africa Diaspora Forum, where we come out in defense of other migrants in South Africa who are subject to xenophobia. We've put together a paper on xenophobia to the Home Affairs Committee based on our work there. These communities then also offer support to our South African Friends of Israel community for Zionist Christians and others. Also, our work with other minority communities, such as the HIP Alliance, Hellenic Italian Portuguese communities, when they came out condemning Jewish South Africans and saying that only people with dual South African and Israeli citizenship, their loyalty to the country, were called into question. Then these other small minority communities came forward and came to our defense in that respect. So in terms of our work with the Diplomatic Corps, the JD Corps, we've now set up an African outreach working group, and we're looking to see how we can come up with viable proposals to that end. So in conclusion, the lessons that we can bring from South Africa is that Jewish communities should always look to build partnerships with other constituencies in pursuing common goals relating to promoting human rights and combating racism. They should take further advantage of whatever laws and institutions that exist to protect citizens against prejudice, racism, and unfair discrimination. While it is always best to resolve confrontations through dialogue and conciliation, it is sometimes necessary to take legal action against those guilty of anti-Semitic behavior. When this is done, it is vital, firstly, only to take up cases where it is likely to get a successful outcome, and secondly, to ensure that the case is firmly followed through to conclusion, no matter how long it takes. I am proud to be representing our community. We are stakeholders, voters, taxpayers, and a constituency made up of incredible individuals who are committed to Jewish values of tikkun olam, job creation, youth development, social welfare, a tolerant society with opportunity for all, and contributes disproportionately in so many ways to building our country. It is my privilege to be able to showcase these efforts in the corridors of power and to work with my colleagues locally and internationally towards ensuring the safety and prosperity of a vibrant and sustainable Jewish community in a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it.
What about BDS?
I wrote this for a different panel.
BDS?
As far as BDS goes, South Africa is ground zero for BDS. The Israel apartheid analogy has tremendous resonance The first Israel Apartheid Week was held on South African university campuses. Often you'll see South African professors, South African spokespeople, South African heroes, struggle heroes who get exported out to different countries. We have a very, one could almost say that our foreign policy has been somewhat hijacked as a country. There's an absolute obsession with the Palestinian narrative, with the issues around the Israeli-Palestinian Middle East conflict. Most lately, in December, our ruling party, the ANC, resolved to downgrade relations with Israel. So we've all been working very hard to try and allow the South African government to continue to maintain full diplomatic relations with Israel. So, saying that South Africa has a history of conciliation, the South African way to try and play a role in mediating between the two parties, and where South Africa has a unique role to play is that South Africa has the ear of both Hamas and Fatah. Hamas was welcomed to the ANC December conference, has been welcomed before by our former president. And so South Africa does have a role to play, and that boycott and walking away from the table just cut South Africa completely out of that role. We're very concerned that that kind of cut of diplomatic ties would result in a spread in other countries. We're working to prevent a boycott of Israel on the university campus of UCT at the moment. As it stands, there are still full diplomatic relations maintained. There isn't anti-Semitism in South Africa. They're very low levels, and it's generally around the Middle East issues whenever something happens in Israel. If you'll see on the latest Gaza, during the latest uprising in Gaza, there are only two countries withdrew their ambassadors. One was Turkey, and the other was South Africa. This was resolved in advance, so if you were to ask me, is it Israeli policy that is influencing these decisions? I wouldn't say that it is. I think that it's part of a general approach to this issue from a South African perspective, and we as the Jewish community would like to see South Africa playing a more active role in bringing the sides together and trying to use the South African example of reconciliation to bring it together.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before to give the last word to Leonid, I would like to say something, and I'm very afraid about that. In this panel, the title is Modern Forms of Antisemitism, Racism, and Xenophobia. And we speak only about anti-Semitism. And perhaps that is one of the reasons of the anti-Semitism, because we saw that we live in our world and we have to open ourselves to other people. I think, for example, in South Africa, you have many problems of racism. In Europe, of xenophobia. I'm sure that anti-Semitism, and we are Jew, or most of us are Jew, is important. But I don't hear only a little bit about racism and xenophobia. And we have to think about that we have to speak, yes, a little bit. I think everyone must to speak about that. Everyone. Not only about anti-Semitism. So, now we are speaking with Leonid Gozman, and he's the president of a foundation, Perspectiva. So I didn't understand the translator is dialogue with an anti-Semite or dialogue with anti-Semitism?
Thank you, sir. Шалом, дорогие друзья. Я буду говорить по-русски. Я владею им все-таки лучше, чем английским, безусловно. И большинство присутствующих говорит по-русски, как я понимаю. Все-таки это диалог с антисемитом или с антисемитами. Мне кажется, что если мы хотим улучшения ситуации или повышения безопасности и так далее, то мы должны вступать в диалог. Диалог – это не обязательно доброжелательный диалог. Армия обороны Израиля находится в диалоге с движением Хамас. Движение Хамас что-то делает. Армия обороны Израиля отвечает. Это диалог, это взаимодействие. Да? Взаимодействие бывает всякое. Так вот, я думаю, что мы собрались в очень сложное и опасное время, когда антисемитизм, ну так же, как сказал господин председатель, так же, как ксенофобия, расизм и все другие формы этих безобразий, возрастает. Но если говорить об, в целом, кто мог подумать, когда четверть века назад Фукуяма объявил конец истории, кто мог подумать, что он настолько неправ, что он так сильно ошибался. С антисемитизмом тоже, но кто мог подумать 20 лет назад, что во многих странах Европы евреи начнут чувствовать себя столь некомфортно и даже из некоторых стран уезжать. Что происходит сегодня у нас? Мне кажется, что бытовой антисемитизм остается маргинальный, остается в таких маргинальных нишах и, в общем-то, мало затрагивает большинство людей, живущих нормальной жизнью, большинство евреев, живущих нормальной жизнью. А вот государственный антисемитизм как-то не печально растет. Мне кажется, это такой пробуждающийся вулкан. Это лава, которая кипит под такой узкой, под такой корочкой тонкой и готова в любой момент прорваться. И субъектом государственного антисемитизма являются на сегодняшний день те, кто говорят, персонификаторы системы, которые говорят как бы от имени государства. Это не первые лица государства сами по себе, но это те, кто говорят от их имени. Те, кто, когда они говорят, воспринимаются как говорящие от имени государства. Я приведу вам пару примеров. История с самолетом. Когда российский самолет был сбит сирийскими военными, которых учили российские инструктора российской ракетой, а виноваты были евреи. Это логично, это, в общем, как-то вполне в тренде истории, культуры. Но интересно здесь не это. Интересно здесь не это, не самое умное, по-моему, решение Министерства обороны свалить на Израиль свой провал. Интересно здесь то, с какой радостью различные спикеры говорили о виновности Израиля. Они говорили со счастьем. Вы знаете, вот им наконец разрешили говорить. Им долгие годы не разрешали, а тут им разрешили. И они были настолько счастливы, им так приятно это было говорить, что даже когда президент, который явно не хотел потерять единственного союзника на Ближнем Востоке, Израиль, единственного союзника из развитых стран, даже когда президент сказал, что все-таки надо помнить, что Израиль не сбивал наш самолет, вот эта кампания не останавливалась еще 2-3 дня. Сигнал никак не проходил. Так им нравилось об этом говорить. Так им хотелось об этом говорить. Или замечательные высказывания наших депутатов о том, что евреи варили христиан в котлах, о том, что они выскочили с наганами из черты оседлости и стали разрушать русские храмы. Понимаете, конечно, в нашей политической системе, это не надо объяснять никому из российских граждан, но я думаю, что наши гости это тоже понимают, в нашей политической системе парламент играет меньшую роль, мягко говоря, чем в современных западных странах. И, например, вице-спикер парламента у нас – это совсем не то же самое, что вице-спикер или один из руководителей парламента во Франции или в Германии или в Соединенном Королевстве. Но проблема здесь не в том, что сказали эти люди, а в том, не их высказывания важны, а важна реакция государства. А реакция государства состоит в том, что ее не было. Не было вообще. Вот вообще не было реакции на эти безумные высказывания. Ну и вот давайте посмотрим, чего они от нас хотят. Они хотят, чтобы мы уехали? Да нет, в общем-то нет. Давления в сторону эмиграции, по-моему, сейчас особого нет. Они хотят, чтобы мы крестились. Да наплевать им на это. Совершенно никого это не волнует. Хочешь крестись, не хочешь не крестись, хочешь будь огнепоклонником. Это совершенно не имеет никакого значения. Евреем ты все равно останешься в их глазах. Они хотят, чтобы мы жили в национально-культурной резервации. Да, это удобно. Это удобно. Когда евреи занимаются только еврейскими делами, синагогой, еврейской культурой, еврейскими традициями, то это еврей, который, в общем-то, не сильно мешает жить современному истеблишменту российскому, современным российским элитам. Но главное, они хотят, чтобы мы оставались виновным другим. Другим
виновным во всем. И чем больше проблем возникает в стране, но это не только у нас, это всегда так было, чем больше проблем возникают в стране, чем больше эти проблемы кажутся неразрешимыми, тем более важно, чтобы мы оставались виновным другим, которого можно обвинить в разных вещах. И я думаю, что мы не можем пойти им навстречу, хотя бы потому, что что они от нас хотят, чтобы мы оставались такими, какие мы есть. Мы им нужны в том качестве, в котором мы здесь сейчас существуем. У них есть определенная мифология о нас, которую надо понять на самом деле. Если мы хотим вступить в диалог, мы должны понимать наших оппонентов. Евреи виновны в революции и терроре. Чем хуже относятся к революции, тем больше в ней виновны евреи. Евреи – фактор дестабилизации, евреи – агенты Запада. И главное, евреи должны быть благодарны за спасение. И они за спасение тогда, 70 лет назад. И они виновны в неблагодарности. Но вот если у наших оппонентов есть некая мифология, есть некие представления, то мы должны отвечать. Вообще, что мы можем сделать с этим? Мы не можем повлиять непосредственно, да? Мы не можем повлиять. Но мы можем сформулировать для себя и эксплицировать четкие ответы. Ответы должны быть совершенно четкими и недвусмысленными. Во-первых, ответственность за революцию на тех, кто противодействовал реформам. На них прежде всего. Ответственность за террор на коммунистах. Да, мы за интеграцию с Западом. Конечно, российские евреи в большинстве своем, в подавляющем большинстве своем, западники, люди, которые видят будущее России в интеграции с западной цивилизацией. Есть еще одна вещь, которую мы обязаны сказать, что мы будем преследовать за антисемитизм. И это не важно, что сегодня у нас нет этой власти. Вот когда у нас появится такая возможность, то мы это сделаем. И вы знаете, у меня просьба к нашим зарубежным гостям, господа. Это очень важно, что вы помогаете культурной жизни евреев здесь, еврейскому сообществу. Это очень важно. Но есть еще одна вещь, которую вы могли бы сделать. Вот есть, например, Петр Толстой, вице-спикер Государственной Думы, который сказал, что евреи выскочили с наганами из черты оседлости и разрушили русские храмы. Он, между прочим, руководитель нашей делегации в парламентской ассамблее Совета Европы. Сейчас наша делегация там не функционирует, потому что она лишена права голоса. Рано или поздно она туда вернется. Господа, используйте свое влияние для того, чтобы одним из условий возвращения российской делегации в парламентскую ассамблею Совета Европы была отставка Петра Толстого. Это было бы полезно, это было бы примером для других, которые могут захотеть говорить что-то подобное. И вот самое главное, на нас нет долга благодарности. На нас нет долга благодарности, нас никто не спасал. У Красной Армии не было такой задачи. Красная Армия решала две задачи. Победа над врагом, которую она ценой страшных жертв, тем не менее, блестяще решила, и обеспечение послевоенной экспансии Советского Союза. Этого не понимало большинство солдат, но руководство Советского Союза это понимало. Эта задача тоже была решена. Но у Красной Армии не было задачи освобождения покоренных Гитлером стран от Гитлера. Это была побочная задача, которая автоматически решалась с отступлением гитлеровских войск. У Красной Армии не было задачи спасения узников концлагерей. Это была побочная, эта задача решалась побочно по мере продвижения Красной Армии. Я даже не хочу говорить о том, что, судя по многим процессам в бывших советских вассальных территориях, там не все оценивают приход советской армии как освобождение. Я не хочу говорить о том, что часть советских заключенных, вне зависимости от их национальности, гитлеровских концлагерей, довольно быстро переехала на северо-восток нашей великой страны, на Колыму там, и так далее. Но даже не об этом речь. А речь о том, что в Красной армии воевали все представители всех народов Советского Союза, в том числе евреи. Среди узников были представители всех народов Европы, и не только евреи. Одна многонациональная группа, Красная армия, спасала или облегчала ситуацию другой многонациональной группы. Нет ни одного этноса, который бы спасал другой этнос. Нет ни одного этноса, который был в ситуации жертвы, и его спасал кто-то другой. Евреи, еврейские солдаты и офицеры Красной армии спасали всех остальных, в том числе евреев, ничуть не меньше, чем таджики, русские, туркмены или кто-то еще. На нас нет долга благодарности. Нам говорят, что если сравнивать Гитлера со Сталином, то, разумеется, для евреев Сталин значительно лучше. Но я не уверен, что человека надо благодарить за то, что он не насильник и не убийца. К насильнику и убийце надо относиться соответствующим образом. Но испытывать благодарность к тому, что он не насильник и убийца, по-моему, нет оснований. Нам говорят, что часть даже органов советских, НКВД, СМЕРШ и так далее, отлавливали и уничтожали нацистских преступников. Да, это правда, и это хорошо. Но, между прочим, мы что, должны быть благодарны Гитлеру за то, что гитлеровские войска периодически расстреливали чекистов? Я что-то не уверен, что мы должны быть благодарны либо тем, либо другим. Мы должны быть благодарны тем, кто жизнь свою положил на взятие Освенцима. Это да, вне зависимости от того, кто они были по национальности или по убеждениям. Я заканчиваю. И мне кажется, что есть два условия нашего выживания здесь. Одно – это иммиграция. Ну, тогда мы перестанем быть российскими евреями. Мы станем евреями Израиля, Германии, любой другой страны, куда мы уедем. И второе условие – это демократия в России. Независимые суды, независимая пресса, открытые выборы. В этой ситуации у нас есть шанс. Спасибо, господа. Тадараба.
Мы исчерпали список выступающих. У нас, наверное, есть еще несколько минут для желающих задать вопросы или сказать какой-то. Пожалуйста, профессор Шнирильман. Оттуда лучше.
Я лишь хочу немножко дополнить то, что сейчас говорил Леонид Гозман. Вы упоминали только Толстого, да? Но есть и другие фигуры. Я сейчас упомяну одну фигуру, очень значимую. Сейчас все сразу узнают, о чем речь. Значит, господин Жириновский, которого в конце 93-го года мы все испугались, да, понятно, как кто там. Вот. Пугаться было нечего. Это фигура где-то комичная, где-то это искусственный актер. Дело не в этом. Я хочу сказать, тоже обращаясь к нашим западным коллегам. Вот господин Жириновский, известный своими ксенофобскими заявлениями, антизападническими заявлениями, шовинистическими заявлениями. И при этом господин Жириновский создал и руководит некий институт мировых цивилизаций. И вот этот институт мировых цивилизаций получает огромные деньги от Европейского Союза. Я не знаю, в курсе ли вы это. Вот меня это удивляет. Господин Жириновский не только не под санкциями за, так сказать, свои высказывания, но он получает огромные деньги от Европейского Союза. Меня это удивляет. Вот, собственно, это то, что я хотел дополнить. Спасибо.
Пожалуйста, еще желающие сказать что-то или задать вот вопрос? Прошу. Сюда, потому что к микрофону, вон там несут уже микрофон.
Я хотел бы спросить коллегу, который говорил о Балканах, Хаю, да? Ой, простите, извините, вас. Можете совсем коротко, глиссандо, да, вот о ситуации в Словении и там, допустим, Боснии и Герцеговине. Интересно было про Хорватию и Сербию, а про вот остальные как бы части бывшей Югославии очень коротко скажите, ну, по контрасту с тем, что вы говорили, если можно.
Regarding other former republics, and now there are 6 or 7, depending where you're sitting. As we're sitting in Russia now, we have 6. So Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, and there is very strong Jewish community in Sarajevo, but they had other problems, and there is let's say, not this type of state anti-Semitism. It is a more anti-Semitism on the streets, as it is in Macedonia, with a few things happening around their Holocaust museum when the war in Gaza was raging, I think, in 2004, I think. There were some situation in the Holocaust Museum or around the houses of prominent Jews in Skopje. It is, to my understanding, and it would be much better for somebody from the Sarajevo Jewish community to be here. There is no visible anti-Semitism in Sarajevo. Those people are walking around with kippahs and everything, so it is quite a good situation regarding the wars and the Muslim majority living in Sarajevo or in this part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Also in Slovenia, which is, let's say, more Europeanized country, it is the first that entered the EU from the old former Yugoslavia. There are few Jews, and there's just one Jewish cultural center in Slovenia. I think 2,000 of Jews live in Slovenia, as we understand, we know. And there is no anti-Semitism as what I know, because I deal mostly with the biggest communities, and those are the ones in Serbia and in Croatia. So, you know, we can discuss this later or something like that, but what I wanted to talk about are the biggest communities in the Balkans, and those are Belgrade and Zagreb. Well, I would say a word about Kosovo. There, the Kosovo is. There are 3 Jewish communities in Kosovo. There are 3 Jewish communities in Kosovo. One is Serbian Jewish community in Kosovo. The other is, and the other 2 are Kosovo Jewish communities of Kosovo, and they're, I guess, now in. Let's say, good relations, and they're interesting communities. I know them all, and and the fourth is one-man show. So once we will reach the point where we can talk about Kosovo more openly and the Jews from Kosovo. But what I know from Kosovo government, because I visited them, as in the capacity of Vice President of the Jewish community of Montenegro, because Montenegro recognized independence of Kosovo, is that they are willing to open a synagogue and Jewish cultural center and everything else, although they have around 20 or 30 Jews in whole Kosovo, but they are very, let's say, pro-Israel and pro-Jewish oriented guys, the guys in the Kosovo Republic or Kosovo Autonomous Province of Serbia, whatever you want to call it.
Так, у нас есть еще 2-3 минуты для желающих. Пожалуйста.
Я хотел, отталкиваясь от последнего выступления господина Гозмана, в котором много было интересного, но главное был посыл, который очень редко встречается. Смысл был действительно диалога с оппонентом, да, с антисемитом. Я хотел бы задать вопрос, поскольку в том, что касается Южной Африки, мне чуть-чуть понятнее это, трем джентльменам, которые представляют Америку и Европу. Есть такая точка зрения, сегодня с утра один из выступающих ее тоже упоминал, которая сводится к тому, что диалог даже не с оппонентом, а с противостоящим тебе не врагом, а противником идеологическим, политическим по проблематике расизма или антисемитизма, что этот диалог бесполезен. Он никуда не приведет. Это две стороны, которые друг друга все равно не поймут. И это замкнутый круг. Как бы вы прокомментировали вот эту точку зрения с учетом того, что только что говорилось? Спасибо.
So, questions to three English-speaking colleagues.
So the question, as I understand it, was it's a fruitless endeavour to try to bring together the study of racism and anti-Semitism. The conversation.
Yes, two parts.
In politics or in academia?
Ideology.
Well, and the two sides don't understand each other. It depends where one is positioned. If you look at conversations, for example, recent conversations both in academia and in politics as well, about the relationship between Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, it's been a difficult conversation, but it's absolutely been a fruitful one. I disagree quite strongly, actually, with the claim that it's a pointless endeavour. You can look at this, for example, in the UK, where I'm based, where the main race equality think tank in the United Kingdom, called the Runnymede Trust, has just facilitated a conversation about Islamophobia, which also has built into it exploring the connections with anti-Semitism. This is the most important anti-racist organisation in the country. These debates are taking place in academia, where there are numerous books, conferences, journal articles that are being published with increasing regularity, which show two things: not just the shared history of these two forms of exclusion, but also their contemporary manifestations. That is not to say that they're the same, because they're not the same. Rather, it's to explore the connections, where they overlap, where they intersect, and where they diverge. Given that those who are racist, who articulate anti-Muslim racism, who articulate anti-Semitism, they can hold these things together. If anti-racists cannot hold them together, then we will all lose. Thank you.
The situation in America is very different, of course, because the American Jewish community is large, very well established, politically in a good situation in many respects. It's not monolithic, there is division and the like. But it's recognized that even a large and strong community needs allies. And Jews in America are allied with various other groups. For instance, America has an increasingly large population of people from India. Lots of Indian doctors, engineers, people in the hotel business, etc., etc. And there's a lot of talk back and forth between Jews in America and Indians, because Indians haven't yet figured out how to situate themselves in the power structures of Washington, D.C., so they look to American Jews for some guidance in that respect, and there's a useful alliance that's developing between them. However, you are right when you talk about ideological extremes. We can talk to lots of people who are allies, we can talk to lots of people who are in the middle, but people who are ideologically hostile are beyond reach. I agree with you.
So I will, 2 words only. The distinction between anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, there is a distinction. But I think we have to put the word xenophobia and to put inside racism and anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a sort of xenophobia. And the point, I see in Belgium and in France, many young people, they don't speak together. And we have many, for example, in Brussels, there is no more Jews in a public school. In some part of near Paris, that is the same problem. So, and it's a problem for the future. So I think really, I think that we have to be more open, and we have to say first that in the Muslim communities there are many anti-Semitism, but in the Jewish community we have some racists, many racists. When you see in the Facebook, when you see what in Twitter, some tweets, I'm very afraid when I'm reading that. And not only against the Arabs, but you see a sort of racism against people, Jewish people, who want peace. I would give you an example. I'm in touch with Tzipi Livni, and we want to invite her in Paris. And the condition that she gave, I don't want to speak with the Jewish people because they are too much racist and anti-left. So we have to speak about xenophobia, racism, and we have to speak with the Muslim public because they have the same problem. And we have to clean what's happening in our community too. Thanks.
Okay, Leonid Gozman asked for additional 10 seconds to say a word. Why actually do we need a dialogue?
Господа, мне кажется, диалог нужен не только для того, чтобы лучше понять оппонента и более эффективно защищаться. Диалог нужен для тех людей, которые не определились со своей позицией, которые смотрят на это со стороны. В споре никогда не происходит сближение позиций, но во время спора, если это публичный спор, люди не придерживаются ни той, ни другой позиции определенно, они сдвигаются в ту или иную сторону. Если мы будем убедительны, то это значит, что мы препятствуем появлению новых антисемитов.
Так, ну вроде бы на этом мы заканчиваем. Мне кажется, что наша секция была весьма плодотворной и успешной. Спасибо всем выступавшим и всем слушавшим.